Canada, maple syrup and La Cabotay, ayy. Kick your ass all hockey season, ayy. Mounties be riding horses, ayy. Yeah, this is Canada.
It is a source of power. And the question today for middle powers like us is whether we establish the conventions and help write the new rules that will determine our security and prosperity, or let the hegemons dictate outcomes. In the new global environment, the ability to form effective coalitions is becoming a central strategic capability. Great powers can compel, but compulsion comes with costs, both reputational and financial. Middle powers can convene, but not everyone can. In the post-rupture world, the nations that are trusted and can work together will be quicker to the punch, more effective in their responses, and more proactive in shaping outcomes, and ultimately, those countries will be more secure and prosperous. Mr. Speaker, middle powers like Australia and Canada hold this rare convening power because others know we mean what we say, and we will match our values with our actions. This has been earned by those before us throughout our history. And the question is now, what do we do with it?
What an eloquent speech. What an eloquent speech, guys. He speaks so well, I can almost believe him. I can almost trust what he says because he speaks so eloquently. Today is Thursday, March 5th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. This is the Canadian Sovereigntist. What's interesting in the last thing he said there, specifically Mr. Carney, is we mean what we say. We mean what we say. That's very interesting because Carney's just been caught contradicting himself 4 times in 5 days with this whole thing around Iran. And that's just one thing. I find it hilarious. And then we get into this story, and I think you guys are going to like this because the hypocrisy in what this guy just says is just insane. So he literally in 5 days, Carney, he endorsed the military strike. He called it a potential violation of international law, admitted Canada was never consulted, and then he refused to rule out sending troops into that same conflict. Guys, this isn't foreign policy. This is a prime minister trying to face 3 directions at once, and that's the timeline, guys. Prime Minister Mark Carney said he backed U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on Iran with regret because although he considers Tehran the greatest threat to stability in the Middle East, the military attacks are a failure of the rules-based order and appear to be a violation of international law. Mr. Carney's first comments since he issued a statement of support for the strike Saturday amount to an effort to distance himself from the actions of U.S. President Donald Trump and Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu. He spoke to media in Sydney on Wednesday during a visit to Australia. We do, however, take this position with regret because the current conflict is another example of the failure of the international order. Just a minor input here. It's a failure of the international order. What international order? The whole international order that's existed has been working within the framework of U.S. military power. That's just a fact. Why do people keep dancing around that fact? That is a fact. When Obama ordered strikes, that was on half the fucking world, pardon my language. That was a clear violation of international law. When the bombings in the Balkans happened in the 90s, all of them, clear violation of law. So I don't even want to talk about Vietnam or any of the other conflicts. It's constantly a violation of law. Upending human rights in different parts of the world for economic benefit of that same rules-based order. What are we even talking about here? Why does this keep popping up? It's because Canada's been working within this framework to a certain degree. It's been pulling out the maximum of what it can from it. And now, because things are changing, the Canadian political class doesn't know what to do with itself. So we keep trying to protect that rules-based order. Get out of here, guys. Grow up. Do something for Canada. Actually do something for Canada. Let's get back into it. And down here, just to show you guys the level of that hypocrisy, just down here, right here, these two paragraphs. The former Liberal cabinet minister, Lloyd Axworthy, has criticized Ottawa's backing of the strikes, noting the attack on Iran was not authorized by the UN. He has contrasted Ottawa's 2026 stand with how Canada in 2003 refused to support the US invasion of Iraq because it was not authorized by UN Security Council. Liberal MP Will Greaves has also spoken out against Canada's backing of the strikes, saying Canada cannot endorse the unilateral and illegal use of military force, the killing of civilians, or the kidnap and assassination of foreign heads of government, while also insisting that our sovereignty, our rights, and our independence must be respected. Thank you. That is exactly that hypocrisy, guys. That is exactly that hypocrisy. But let's be precise with what just happened, because on Saturday, Carney endorses the strikes. He literally said, we support the US and Israel. His own party pushes back, guys. A former Liberal cabinet minister invokes 2003, the last time Canada actually held a line against an ally acting outside of the UN. A sitting Liberal MP uses the word illegal, and by Wednesday, Carney is calling the strikes a potential violation of international law and saying Canada was not consulted. Those are his words, not a critic's interpretation. And on that point of not being consulted, why would Canada be consulted? Canada has no meat in this fight. We have nothing with this. This does not affect us in the least little bit. Why would we be consulted? What can Canada help? This is the thing with Israel, and this is the thing with the US. This is US projecting power, and this is Israel keeping stability in the Middle East through the lens of Israel. This has nothing to do with Canada. Why do we want to be consulted? That would just take time. You want to get all of NATO together, have a round table about striking Iran. You know how much time that takes? That completely kills the element of surprise, especially consulting the United Nations. Guys, this is the values sovereignty failure in real time. Canada does not have a foreign policy position. Canada has a reaction. The US and Israel acted, Carney endorsed it, and then the blowback came from the inside of his own party, and he started walking it back while technically maintaining the original position. Guys, he still supports the strikes with regret because they may be illegal. But it's the judgment, but he's letting other people, judge for themselves, what this might all be about. This is not principled. He's not a principled man. This is a politician trying to be on every side of a decision that other countries made without asking him. Canada was not consulted on the strikes. Cry me a river. Carney, he admitted that openly. And his response to not being consulted is to endorse the decision anyway and call it standing by our allies. You do not stand by allies who do not tell you what you are doing. You just follow them. And that's what Canada always does. We always follow. So right here, this is also interesting, guys. It says, despite decades of UN Security Council resolutions, the tireless work of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the succession of sanctions and diplomatic frameworks, Iran's nuclear threat remains, and now the United States and Israel have acted without engaging the United Nations or consulting allies, including Canada, he said. But even as Mr. Carney sought to put distance between himself and the airstrikes, he emphasized the threat he believed Iran poses to the world. The Prime Minister said backing of the strikes is not a blank check for the US and Israel, saying they must take care to avoid hurting non-combatants. Asked whether he considers the US and Israeli airstrikes a war of necessity or of choice, Mr. Carney did not directly answer, but said Iran's possession of a nuclear bomb would be a massive threat. Prime Minister Mark Carney has left the door open to Canadian military deployment as part of the widening conflict in the Middle East if circumstances warrant. Mr. Carney, who has already said that Canada has no plans to join the US and Israeli attacks on Iran, was asked Thursday in Australia whether he could categorically rule out deploying military assets to the region. He says, You've asked a fundamental hypothetical in a conflict that can spread very broadly. Today's events, recent events, point to that. Mr. Carney told reporters during a Thursday press conference with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Canberra. So one can never categorically rule out participation, he said. I really want to stop here and kind of, break this down a bit. Because now pay attention to this timeline, guys. Because Wednesday he calls the strikes a potential violation of international law. Thursday, he will not rule out sending Canadian troops into the same conflict. And obviously, I want to be fair here. Every prime minister, they're never going to categorically rule out military deployment. This is a standard political non-answer. He said something without saying anything, right? But in this context, it kind of is, because Carney is not being asked about a hypothetical conflict. He is being asked about a very specific conflict that he just called potentially illegal. A conflict that started without Canada being consulted. And his answer is that we will stand by our allies, if it makes sense. Why do we have to be a part of this? This has nothing to do with us. Which allies? The ones that didn't consult us? The ones whose actions you're calling a potential violation of international law? Those same allies? That's who you want to... Why do we have to stand by them? Why can't we just not do anything and just go on about our lives and try and fix our country? At what point does standing by our allies become following orders from people who did not ask us for our opinion before starting a war? Canada has 2,000 citizens trying to get out of the Middle East right now. Carney is in Australia talking about maybe sending the military in. This is the distance between Canadian citizens and Canadian foreign policy, guys. And here it is. These two paragraphs right here really just outline it. There's a distinction between the offensive actions that were taken and are being taken by the United States and Israel, that were taken by them without consultation with Canada, with other allies, and we are not party to those actions, he said. But we will always defend Canadians and we will always defend our allies when called upon. And that's it. That's what he says. So he says nothing, and then he says, we're going to be there for you guys. But we will defend our allies, guys, when called upon. So it's like, hey, Donnie, hey, you need us to help you with a bombing raid? Oh, BB, hey, BB, you need some troops? Let's send some in. Oh, you guys need subs? Oh, wait. Let us get that procurement over the next decade from the South Koreans and the Germans, because now we're splitting that contract. Canada was not called upon, guys, when the strike started. And Canada was not consulted. Canada found out the same way everybody else did. And now the framing has quietly shifted from, we weren't consulted to we will still respond to our allies when called upon. We're just a phone call away, guys. What a significant move. It means we're just available. Guys. Just call us up. Call me on my cell phone. We're just on standby. Just waiting to be called by allies. Guys, this isn't sovereignty. This is a client state with better public relations. A sovereign Canada would have a position that exists before the phone even rings. It would have raised those red lines, and it would have said publicly, if you want Canadian support, you consult us first. Instead, we got an endorsement, and then a regret, then a maybe, and then troops. All within 5 days of a conflict Canada had no hand in starting. Because in the pattern across every episode on this channel is always the same. Canada does not lead. Canada does not set terms. Canada waits to find out what the powerful have decided and then figures out how to say yes in a way that sounds like a choice. That's what happens. And we can always have these great eloquent speeches. We seem to be very gifted in that aspect. But the lead doesn't actually exist. What has Canada actually led? Not much. And this is why all of this matters to Canadians, guys, because Carney spent this week in Australia talking about middle power sovereignty, about building coalitions of countries that trust each other. He even gave a speech about Canada not being dependent on any single power, which is a lie. It's a wholesome lie that we're not dependent on anybody. And the numbers, economic, military, from every standpoint, paint a starkly different picture. Even yesterday, what sovereign nation to rebuild critical infrastructure starts calling up foreign companies for investments to build up your own critical infrastructure. No actual independent nation does that. Not if you want to stay sovereign. And in the same week, he endorsed a military strike Canada was not consulted on, called it potentially illegal, and then left the door open to sending Canadian troops into it. Canadians are not being asked whether they want their military deployed to a conflict that started without them. They're being told their prime minister cannot categorically rule it out, guys. And that gap between what Carney says about sovereignty in parliament buildings and what he does when allies act without asking is the actual story. And it has been really the story the entire week, probably since Carney's inauguration. That's all I have for you guys today. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.